This is StoryBeat, Storytellers on Storytelling, an exploration into how master storytellers and artists develop and build brilliant stories and works of art that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators of all kinds find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. My guest today, Valorie Kondos Field, is the retired head coach of the 7-time NCAA Champion, 22-time regional, and 18-time Pac-12 champion UCLA women's gymnastics team. A UCLA Athletic Hall of Fame inductee, the 4-time National Coach of the Year, was named West Region Coach of the Year and Pac-12 Coach of the Century for her solid track record as a preeminent coach. Formerly a professional ballet dancer, Miss Val, as she's affectionately known, was never a gymnast herself. Her reputation for teaching valuable life lessons while encouraging individuality and joy is only one reason why 46 former U.S. national team members and half of the last 2 Olympic teams committed to UCLA. Miss Val's many credits also include choreographing and directing live variety shows, including 26 years for SeaWorld Summer Nights and the San Diego Zoo. Miss Val is a dynamic and charismatic speaker with an extensive schedule of corporate coaching events and has contributed to various panel discussions, including Bustle's Rule Breakers and ESPNW's Summit. In her book, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance, the recent breast cancer survivor shares her motivating messages with the world. And in her TED Women 2019 talk, she inspires people to reevaluate their definition of success, encouraging leaders to inspire others without compromising the human spirit. For more, please be sure to visit officialmissval.com. For all those reasons and so many more, it is my distinct honor and true privilege to welcome the extraordinary Miss Val, Valorie Kondos Field, to StoryBeat today. Miss Val, welcome to the show.
Steve, thank you so much. I was giggling halfway through all of that introduction, thinking, how did all that happen?
Yeah, well, I do that every day. I think, how did I get here?
I love it.
So I assume you've been dancing virtually your whole life, yes?
I have been virtually dancing my whole life, yes.
So were you a little girl when you started to dance?
No, well, I don't know. I was 7. That's not little, but my parents put me into ballet because they found out that I have slight scoliosis. And my doctor said, you need to get her into ballet or gymnastics and to strengthen the muscles around my spine. And that's how I got into it.
That's very smart that they used some form of enjoyable activity, not just pure exercise, to get you to do something to help your physicality.
Exactly.
Yes?
Yeah.
That's cool. So many people, then obviously you became a professional dancer at some point, a professional ballet dancer. Did you find dance to be your calling? Was coaching your calling? Did you feel it that way, or was it just something to do?
Coaching or dancing?
Both, either.
Well, as I look back on my life and as I speak with young people, I like it when they have goals and they have a vision, but I always want them to keep their minds open to the opportunities that arise, because I stuck with dance because I loved the freedom of dancing. I loved performing. I never, ever got nervous going on stage, but I was not born to be a ballet dancer. I don't have the body. I'm not flexible. I would go to many auditions where you just kind of stand there and they peruse your structure. And I can't tell you how many times I was told that my head was too big and my neck was too short. And I remember like sucking in my cheeks and going, how am I supposed to make my head smaller and my neck taller? So I wasn't born for that. I mean, but I loved it. And I started dancing professionally, meaning you get paid for your performances when I was 12. For Nutcrackers and such. And then as far as coaching goes, I think that I have a calling to teach and to motivate and to inspire people to achieve things greater than they would have normally seen themselves achieving. And I think I could have gone in so many different directions with those innate abilities. And it just so happened that I was dancing professionally, and I heard that UCLA needed a dance coach for their gymnastics team. And a lot like you, Steve, you've continued to get degree after degree after degree.
Yes.
I love learning. I loved learning. I was 22. I'd not gone to college, and I really missed the challenge of school and learning.
Right.
So when UCLA asked, they offered me a full scholarship to come be the dance coach, the gymnastics, and the choreographer for the gymnastics team. And they said, we can't give you a salary, but I can give you a full scholarship. I was like, done. I retired from dancing, moved to LA, and that's how the whole thing started in 1982.
So I'm curious, how do we go from being 20, you're saying you were 22 at the time, yes?
Yes.
So how do we go from being 22-year-old dancer to being asked to work at a school to choreograph gymnasts?
Well, there you go, asked. In my book, one of the most impactful chapters is talking about the ask and how to respectfully and confidently make the ask in life, because we really don't get much unless we ask.
True.
I'm here because you asked.
Correct.
And so I heard UCLA needed a dance coach for the gymnastics team, kind of like through the universe, whatever, people that knew me. And without any hesitation, I found out who the head coach was, and I called him up and I made the ask, do you need a dance coach? And when I look back, okay, I was at UCLA 37 years. All those accolades that you enumerated, those would have never, ever happened had I not had the courage to make the ask. And the reason why I love talking about this, especially with young people, is because all it takes is courage to pick up the phone or to ask somebody to lunch or something like that. And the absolute worst thing that can happen is they can say no. But who cares? It's not, don't take it personally. They don't even know you. They're just busy. They said no.
That's the truth for virtually every kind of industry or business. It's interesting that you asked them. They didn't come seeking you. You actually put yourself out. And I think that that's a really key component for anybody in any art form or business. You have to put yourself out. They're not going to come looking for you.
Well, and I think, okay, so that was my biggest, boldest ask. And then the next most important ask of my life came years later when my husband and I asked Coach John Wooden to come to dinner. And I'd never met Coach. And my husband had known him. My husband was our football defensive coordinator for many, many years. And Bobby, my husband, kept saying, Coach Wooden has got so much on his calendar. He doesn't need another obligation. And I kept telling my husband, he can say no, it's fine, but let's make the ask. So we made the ask. Coach was 80 and he came over for dinner with his daughter, and he ended up staying. We had dinner at 5:30 because I figured that was the time 80-year-olds had dinner. But I'm 60 and I have dinner at 5:32, so whatever. And he left at 11:30 that night. And he stayed for 6 hours. And that started a friendship and a relationship that my husband and I had with Coach Wooden until literally the day he died in the UCLA hospital. We were right there with him and his family. And it was more than a friendship. It was like family. It was like, I felt like I was his daughter. Bobby was his son. We had a very, very close relationship. And I've had so many people, including some of his athletes that played for Coach Wooden, say, how did you ever get such a close relationship with the great John Wooden? And I said, because we made the ask. Just like you said, Coach Wooden wasn't going to call us and say, hey, can I come over for dinner?
Right.
We made the ask.
So not that there's a human on earth that doesn't know who John Wooden is, but just in case for the listeners, let's be sure they understand that he was considered to be the greatest basketball coach in the history of college coaching, if not all coaching, professional and otherwise. What did you learn from him? How did he change your perspective on coaching? What did he say to you?
Oh, it was actually his definition of success that changed my perspective of coaching. Because I I was asked in 1990 to become the new head coach. I had no desire to coach. I was going to go off and be a journalist or something. And the athletic director called me in and asked me to be the coach. And I laughed out loud and I said, do you remember, I don't know the first thing about gymnastics. I grew up on stage.
Right.
And the athletic director, the woman, she was, first of all, brilliant. She's considered the godmother of Title IX in sports, Dr. Judy Holland. She said to me, I've observed how you've worked with these student athletes. I love how you're tough, but you're compassionate. And I trust you'll figure the rest out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I got moving forward with one of the premier athletic teams in the country. So I did what I thought was prudent. And I just studied and mimicked other coaches. And I literally felt, I remember saying, you grew up on stage, you can act, just act like a coach. And
whatever that is.
I was horrible. Our team was horrible. We were like capital letters horrible. And I was walking through the student store on my way to resign, actually. I was walking through the student store to go to the athletic department to tell the athletic director, I told you so. I don't know what I'm doing. And I happened upon Coach Wooden's book on leadership. And as I picked it up, it magically opened to his definition of success.
Wow.
And in paraphrase, it says, success is peace of mind in knowing you have done your best. And I swear it was like an aha moment in my life. Success is peace of mind in knowing you have done your best. I had been trying to be somebody else by mimicking other coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing that happens when you try to be somebody else, first of all, you're never going to be as good at them being them. So you'll always be a second-rate them. But the worst thing that happens is it prevents you from really becoming and blossoming into the person that you're supposed to be. So I didn't resign, and I went back to my office and I said, okay, what do they see in me? What do I bring to the table? And I remember hearing something when I was younger about never outsource your incompetencies, but don't think you need to know everything in leadership position. So it's smart to outsource. Never outsource your competencies, but be smart enough to outsource your incompetencies. And so I didn't know anything about gymnastics. Those were my incompetencies. So I hired really good coaches to, as we say in athletics, do all the X's and O's.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what my competencies were. And I knew that I could develop our athletes to be calm and confident and excited when they competed and not nervous. Because that's how I always felt on stage. I never was nervous. I was always calm in the wings. I always was confident, but I had this enthusiasm. I could not wait to get on stage. And that's what I wanted to be able to teach our student athletes. And I knew I could do that as well, if not better than anybody else in the country. That was my competency. So once I got that clear picture, then I moved forward and I stopped being horrible. Our team stopped being horrible. And that reading Coach Wooden's definition of success before I ever met him changed the trajectory of my career.
So you learned a lot from him before you ever actually met him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I know one of his big things, and I know it's your big thing too, so I want to hear about it, is that not focusing on winning. That being we have a very we have a society that's focused on winning. We currently have a particular president who talks about winning all the time. What is it about winning that coaches probably would be best not to emphasize?
Well, I feel like in any avenue, in any venue, whether it's sports, politics, life, parenting, when you focus on winning and that is your North Star, then it's very easy to dip outside of your moral compass and your moral values, mm-hmm. and instill a win at all cost culture, mm-hmm. and whatever you're trying to achieve. And that's what my whole TED Talk is about, is all winning success? No. And if you only focus on winning, are you prepared to be responsible for the repercussions of what that will bring. And what really got me, actually the reason why I retired last year was so I could speak as much as possible on this. The reason why I was passionate about doing a TED Talk about this was because I've just seen this win at all cost culture, which is smack dab in our faces with the United States Gymnastics team, or not team, but the community, and the Larry Nassar scandal. And how did this pedophile, how did he get access continuously for 30-something years to sexually abuse young girls? Because the United States Gymnastics Federation was only focused on winning. So then that broadened my thought process to, you know what? It's systemic in every culture on the planet, winning. And when you look at the statistics, especially now, there's more reports of depression, stress, anxiety, and suicide in our youth than ever before in our history. And that's on us. That's not on the kids. That's on us parents, coaches, leaders. And it comes from every kid will tell you there's so much stress and pressure to be the best, to get an A, to get a win, to get into that notorious college so your parents can have bragging rights. It's like, it's too much pressure. And so we have to redefine success for our children, for ourselves.
All right. So can you give us a definition of success? I know what it is for me, but how is it for you?
Okay. What is it? What is your definition?
So I teach this to my students who, all have glitter in their eyes, and I teach screenwriting, and they all want to become successful filmmakers and screenwriters and so on. And I said, and success is what you feel inside you that you've accomplished and achieved that makes you feel good about the work, not necessarily what somebody else feels about the work. And if you feel good about the work, that is a kind of success. I also go to, there's a semi-well-known psychologist who's no longer alive, but wrote a number of books. And his one book was called I Ain't Much, Baby, But I'm All I've Got. And he talks about if you have one true friend who you can rely on in life, you're a highly successful person. And most people have less than one. Many people have no real friend in life. And so that's the way I look at success. Sometimes it gets defined by how much money did you make, or how famous are you, and all those things. That's not success. I guess it's a marker, but that's all it is a marker. It's not true success.
Absolutely. And I do believe that what you just said is truth. Like, I always feel that the things that are truthful have been passed down since the dawn of man. So it's not like your definition of success, Steve, is so new and brilliant. It's just that we all need people in our lifetime to put these truths in a vernacular that we will understand, because what you just said is exactly what Coach Wooden coined as his definition of success, being the best that you can be. Just be able to go home every night. Like, one of his favorite quotes that he got from his father was, "Make each day a masterpiece." And at night when I go home and I'm going to bed and I have some quiet time and I go through my day and I just start thinking about what are the things that, how did I display the best version of me today? Was I an honest person? Check. Yes. Was I kind? Yes. Was I compassionate in my listening and my empathy for people? Yes. Did I work hard? Yes. Did I push myself to learn something today? Yes. So if I can check all those boxes off today, I've had a successful day.
So if we go all the way back to the beginning of your coaching career, where you were pretending to be a coach in the beginning because you were imitating other coaches and not being the true you probably weren't checking all those boxes. You were probably being a little tougher on people than you needed to be, and you probably weren't exercising what you currently know to be the truth. Is that accurate?
It was horrible. You're absolutely right. And I think that sadly, there's still so many coaches and parents that lead our youth from their egos. They coach from their egos. So many coaches out there only look at the players as commodities to help them win. And I am excited to see that it's shifting. And I am excited to say that more coaches, I would say 90% of the coaches I talk to now versus 10%, they're the ones that are really excited about developing the whole human being that is the athlete, and not just focusing on their athletics. When I was going through this little aha moment of mine and shifting my coaching perspective, I remember walking in from the parking lot to the athletic department and stopping and thinking, how many millions of dollars are spent in this athletic department for 700 student athletes to be able to say, ha ha, we beat you, for bragging rights? How many bazillions of dollars are spent from Pee Wee football to travel league soccer to the Olympics, World Cup soccer, NCAA athletics, to be able to, for bragging rights, to say, ha, we beat you. Hi, Russia, we beat you again. Ha, China took you down. Okay, there has to be more to athletics than that. Because if that's all there is to it, okay, first of all, oh my gosh, you've got me in this soapbox, Steve. First of all, it's when you win, it's your ego and it's money, because dollars follow winning. And we all know money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out my why. Why was I going to coach? Why did I want to continue to do this job? And it was really, it was so clear to me at that point. It was like, athletics is a masterclass in learning really tough life lessons that you don't learn in the classroom. And so I was excited to develop champions in life, to take these young women and develop them as whole, comprehensive, holistic human beings that were going to go out and make the world a better place. And if I did that well enough, their athleticism would also skyrocket, and it would translate to the competition floor. And it did. And that's when we started winning. Well, so like when people ask me what I do when I was coaching, I'd say I develop champions in life, or I'd say I develop superheroes. That's what I do.
You're much more of a, not that all coaches aren't motivators. I think you're a motivator primarily, not a coach primarily. I think the two can be equated, but not totally equated. So yeah, well, and you proved the opposite in the beginning of your career, where you weren't really motivating people, you were just coaching at them.
Right. And you hit on a great point. And I go into this in a little bit of detail in my TED Talk, is there's a difference in coaching, again, in parenting. I think parenting is the most noble of professions on the planet. But there's a difference between dictating and motivating.
Absolutely.
You can dictate to your child to eat a healthy dinner. You can dictate that, and they will begrudgingly do it as long as it takes them to do it. But if you motivate them to do it through education, through showing them how their body is going to react better for them on the soccer field tomorrow, or how their body is going to get more deep sleep so that they're going to have a better outcome in their basketball game. If you can motivate them to want to eat healthy through education, then you've done that child a service of helping them set up a life skill that they can choose or not choose. You know, we all do. We all can choose to eat crap or drink too much or whatever, or we can choose to eat healthy. But we're educated enough to be motivated to want to make the better decision versus dictating the better decision. And the outcome is night and day.
Well, isn't it always better when the person you're motivating comes to the conclusion themselves rather than you trying to jam it into them?
Absolutely. And isn't that the role of parenting?
Yes.
Is the role of parenting just to dictate to your child what to do, and then they become 18 and they resent you and they do the exact opposite? That's not parenting.
And teaching, it's what teaching is. I mean, parenting is teaching, but being a teacher is the same thing. It took me a number of years as a teacher to kind of get my understanding of that under my feet. I didn't have that right in the very beginning. And I think that's a very valuable lesson for people to know. listening is a really important item. It took me several years of teaching before I understood that I needed to be a better listener, and that I was going to learn more from my students if I listened to them than if I were just blathering. And I know that you focus on listening as well. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite, most memorable team meetings was when our sports psychologist talked about the importance of developing the skill of listening. And listening isn't just not talking when someone else is talking.
Mm-hmm.
Listening is really silencing your mind so you can hear the person and you can hear the intention behind their words, not just their words, because I think this is where we all get a little too self-righteous nowadays, where we call people out on a little word that they misused, and they don't look at their intention. But the cool part about this meeting that I'll always remember is he put in big, bold letters up on the board, listen, and he spelled it out. And then he rearranged those letters. And when you rearrange the letters that spell listen, it spells silent.
Ooh. Oh,
isn't that cool?
That's really cool. I'd never heard that before. So you brought up the word, I have it as something I want to cover, which is this notion of intention for athletes. And I know you focus on intention. Tell us about that. What do you teach or coach your athletes in terms of intention? What does it mean?
This is the biggest lesson that I hope that they do get from me. And that is that to not go through life blindly, just either doing what people tell you to do or waiting for life to happen to you, but to have intention with everything you do. And so, as an athlete, a lot of athletes don't like to condition, and they will get through it because the coach tells you how many numbers of sit-ups, push-ups, leg lifts to do. So you do the numbers. If you are intentional about the attention you give to each rep of your sit-ups, push-ups, leg lifts, if you are intentional, imagine how much more of a benefit you're going to get from those 10 push-ups than if you simply just busted them out because your coach told you to.
Right. Did you happen to see the recent documentary called The Last Dance, which was more
Of course.
about Michael Jordan? Yeah. Well, there's a guy who was the greatest, I think in my mind, the single greatest basketball player who's ever lived, period. And he worked harder than everybody. So
absolutely.
What does that mean? It means you got to keep working at it. It's not, your gifts are gifts, but you have to make the gifts into something.
And you have to, I love that. And I had such an incredible opportunity last year. I had a one-on-one for an hour with Kobe Bryant, and it was the same thing. We talked about the concept of joy and how to bring joy into everything you do in life. And it comes from your intention of why you're doing it. And so he said, it's everybody knows that Kobe got up at 4:30 every morning and got to the gym hours before the team did. And he would put in 2 practices before the team even showed up. And then he would go through the full practice with the team. And his intention behind getting up at 4:30 made it joyful. He said, when I would go in and shoot an extra 50 free throws, I filled up with joy, and that joy that comes from pride in a job well done, because my intention was to become as foolproof as possible when I shot, to up my averages. That was his intention. Had he not had intention, he wouldn't have gotten up at 4:30 in the morning to get in extra. He would have gone to the gym with a lackadaisical attitude, and on and on and on. So it's the intention behind what you do. Even when you read a book, it's like, it drives me crazy when I would see my student athletes studying, but their phone is right there. And literally like every 6 seconds, they're checking their phone because of course it's beeping, or they're refreshing the social page or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, could you just, I guarantee it, if you will turn your phone off and give yourself 30 minutes of uninterrupted studying, have proper intention with what you're doing, versus an hour of studying, checking your phone every so many seconds, I guarantee you, you're going to learn something. It's going to be embedded in your brain, and you're going to have better recall when you go in for the test.
Well, I'll only diverge for half a second here to say that it's been a problem for all of us that teach in a classroom where people have computers open, is that we find that the students don't think that we see them on the internet screwing around because we're only looking at the back of their computer lid. But we see that they're actually not paying attention to what's going on in the room. And it's the same thing that you're talking about. They're lacking intention. And I do get on them about it, but there's only so far you can take it. They have got to come to the dance themselves.
But you know what, Steve, this is a perfect example of dictating change versus motivating change.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can dictate change. You could say no computers. Let's go back to old school where you're taking notes,
Exactly.
Handwritten notes. You can dictate that change, or you can motivate them to want to change. And what I always used to tell my athletes is like, okay, you're going to spend the 50 minutes in class. If you actually will pay attention for those 50 minutes, it's the first layer of your studying to pass the class. So when you go to read what you've read on that lesson, or when you go and work with your tutor, or you're going to study hall, whatever, it's going to be recall. It's not going to be listening to it for the first time. So if you have to be in class for 50 minutes anyway, why don't you have the integrity to actually listen? Because in the long run, it's going to cut down the amount of time that you're going to have to cram. And you're just idiots if you don't, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, Caitlin Ohashi is like one of our reigning superstars out there.
Awesome.
And she and about 4 of her teammates, we were going through starting finals, and it was just so stressful in the gym. And you could tell they hadn't had any sleep, and they were cranky, and they were just like not living good lives at that point. And I called them in the gym. I called them in my office, and I said, I've read a statistic that girls are on their phones an average of 8 hours a day.
Mm-mm.
Do you think it's true? And they said yes. That when you add it all up, scrolling, yes. And then I said, okay, you're all stressed out. You haven't gotten any sleep. You're eating like crap, the whole bit. How would this last week have been different if you had put your phone away? So you would only give yourself half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the afternoon, half an hour in the evening, get caught up on things, but chose this week of finals to put your phone away. And without even a hesitation, Caitlin Ohashi said, oh my gosh, I'd be a lot less stressed. I said, then okay, connect the dots, Caitlin. You are attached to your phone. The phone is not following you around. You're carrying it around. Don't. If you know you're going to be less stressed, do something different.
You have control. You're in control. It's
yes.
not, although it's been set up psychologically to control you in a way. So you have to fight that a little bit. That's your intention. You've got to intentionally not be stuck on the phone. So I'm curious about, right now we're having this conversation in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic around the world. And it can be very difficult for people to get anything done right now because of this stressor, this thing that people are stuck at home and so on. What advice would you give people in terms of keeping goals and keeping things moving during this period?
Well, I think what you said is spot on. Is what's helped me get through this time are goals.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the gamut of suffering that's going on. And I've been very fortunate to be one of the people that I don't have to worry about food and a shelter, and
right.
I don't have to worry about being abused in my home. There's just been so much sadness that has kept me up at night. I'm sure all of us, with just, I feel this feeling of helplessness of what can I do? And so I focused on, control the controllables. Don't worry about the uncontrollables. Focus what you can control. And I've been asked to do a lot of Zooms with gyms, with corporations, talking about how to get through this in a positive way. And so If I'm talking to you right now, I better be motivated to do this. I can't be in Debbie Downer pity party.
Right.
I need to be motivated to do this. How am I going to get that way? Because I'm sad. Like there's an underlying feeling I'm feeling every day throughout the whole day that I am very sad and concerned for our country, for our society. So what can I do about that? Control the controllables. Okay. I can control, as we just talked about, how much time I spend scrolling through social. Because when I scroll through social, part of it is motivating and a lot of it is not motivating.
Is not, yeah.
Put that away. Focus, have intention on what you scroll through on your social. Have intention in pulling up the podcast or pulling up the YouTubes or go open a book that is going to help me figure out how to live through this day, as we spoke about earlier, making it a masterpiece. And goals are super, super, super important in life. Actually, getting back to something you said, focusing on winning. As a coach, we didn't focus on winning, but we talked about it at the beginning of the season. Our goal is to win the national championship. Okay, now let's put that aside and let's talk about how we're going to do that. Let's break it down by month, by week, by day. And those goals helped us. I always told our kids, we're going to get 1% better today. And what does 1% look like today? And so, like with myself, I pretend like I work out at home. I don't work out. Like I have to go to a class. I can I'm going to go give myself a workout on the carpet. Yeah. I do 30 crunches and I'm like done. I find something else to do. So how am I going to get 1% better today? What's that goal? Give myself a goal, write it out. And then I don't get to leave until I achieve that goal. And then celebrate those little micro goals. Celebrate them. Not by going anything in Hot Fudge Sunday after I did my little workout, but celebrate it.
I read that. I read that you were talking about yourself, and I know I went through this at the beginning of this pandemic with this notion of ping-ponging. That's the term I read you use, ping-ponging, which is where you can't quite get on a straight track on anything. You're just all over the map, and you can't quite get your thoughts straight. And I think that what you're talking about now about addressing a goal that you have and focusing on the goal and getting the goal achieved, I think that helps with that ping pong. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel very badly, and I felt this the whole time for parents that have been at home that are no longer just expected to be parents, but they're expected to be math teachers and gym teachers and loving parents. And sadly, I had in my conversations with them, I've had so many parents that said, I'm so sick of fighting with my daughter over getting her homework done. And they've said, I can't believe I have to admit this, but I'm doing her homework for her so that I can just check that box off. And, I love the conversations that I've had over Zoom with parents about this. And I just feel that there's a way, once again, to motivate your child to want to do the things that they don't want to do. Because think about this, Steve. We don't need to be motivated to do the things we like to do.
Right.
We have to find the motivation to do the things we don't want to do.
Exactly.
And the only way I have found that happens consistently is through education. Why is it going to be better for me in the long run? Why am I going to have less pain if I can actually motivate myself to do the things I don't want to do? And I think with kids, I know that I learned that with our student athletes is once you bring them into the equation, they're more invested in getting the job done with the proper intention. So if you can have the conversation with your child and say, okay, listen, you got to learn math. Okay. You've got to study this. If I can't help you, you got to find somebody to help you. So you tell me when you want to study, where you want to study. Do you want to study for an hour straight? Do you want to break it up into 20 minutes? What do you want to do? Because once you bring someone into the equation, then they're more invested into the process.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, you've been your whole career coaching, teaching, and so on, motivating people who are between the ages of 17, 18, 21, 22, and you're giving them these valuable lessons that they will then take throughout their whole life. They are life lessons. They're not just athletic lessons. Most athletes, with rare exception, have careers past 31, 35. Most real, the big famous athletes, they don't get that old before their career peters out in sport. And so then life kicks in. And we've seen lots of examples in time of athletes who, once their athletic career was over, they floundered. They didn't know what to do. And they got into one kind of trouble or another.
Well, and sadly, it is because they have identified themselves as an athlete their whole lives.
Right.
But they've also been identified from a young age. You're an athlete. And that's why there is a movement out there. I think it's LeBron and Nike that started the platform of I am more than an athlete. And you can pull up on YouTube conversation after conversation with these professional, high-level athletes that all tell the same story. I wish I could go home to my family over the holidays and talk about something besides basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I am more than basketball.
Uh-huh.
I got that with the elite gymnasts. I didn't get that with like the gymnasts that were not on the national team, that were just a level below. I didn't get that as much. They were like think blue collar gymnasts. They were used to really hard work, but they also didn't grow up these little superstars in their households that were going to go make the Olympic team and win gold medals and all that. They were more than an athlete. And I recognized this when I retired. I just retired last June, and I no longer had the label of coach. And I was on an airplane. This woman said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, if you asked me a week ago, I would tell you I was the head coach of the UCLA gymnastics team. But today, I'm just me." And she said, "Honey, drop the just. Me is enough." And I thought, you know what? I'm not a different person today than I was when I was coaching. I'm the same person.
Exactly.
I'm just taking everything I learned and putting it into new avenues in life. And that's great athletes. I'm not just talking great scorers of points, but great athletes use their platform for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
I just read yesterday that Kevin Love, professional basketball player, yes, UCLA Bruin, but he has done so much work vocally with bringing attention to this stigma that has been mental health, that has been stigmatized, and making it not scary and something that athletes should be able to talk about openly. He's getting the Arthur Ashe Award for the ESPYs this year because he used his platform, he used his celebrity for a greater good. And so when he quits playing, he'll have this other thing that is exciting for him to continue.
Sure. Oh, well, and that's a great thing. So when you see great athletes go out and do great things with their lives, that came from those inner feelings. How much of being a champion athlete is psychological? Aside from the physical's obvious, but how much of it's psychological?
There is no athlete that will become a champion if they don't have a really strong mental game.
Mm-hmm.
And they call it the game within the game. You can put in all the physical training you want, but if you do not develop your mental game alongside with that, and you think your mind is a muscle, you've got to work that mentally more so, not just as much, but more so than you work your muscles, your muscle memory. And the athletes that have conquered that mental game, they're the ones that rise to the top.
Is there a way that you motivate them psychologically to have that mentality to raise themselves up? Is there something that you do?
Yeah, I've done this a lot. I coached balance beam, and one reason why I loved coaching beam was because it is so mental. It's literally 4 inches wide, and you got to flip and stay on it.
I don't know how they do it. I watch that and I go, how are they doing that? I don't know.
Honestly, I don't know how they do it either. I just bark at them to do it. But when you watch athletes on beam, they can be super straight. They can do a backflip and be perfectly straight on the beam. But if their mental game is lacking and they're thinking, "Oh God, don't fall," or they thinking, I don't feel strong, or they're thinking, oh shoot, I hope I make this, they will fall.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they'll fall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. You see them even land with both feet perfectly on the beam, and they will just innately wobble and fall. And so what I would do is I would do acting one-on-one with them. And I would say, go do your balance beam routine. And the whole time you're up there, I want you to think, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. And inevitably they would have like 4 falls. Go back up on beam and think, I just want to have fun. Well, they wouldn't fall as much, but they would wobble all over the place. Okay, now go up on beam and think, I got this, I am invincible. And before every skill you do, hit that mental cue. I am strong. I got this. Whatever it is that resonates with you, that is powerful, you say that mental cue to yourself before every skill. And 100% of the time, they have a better result.
Wow. How much are fun and joy the same, or are they different?
That's a fabulous question. And Kobe and I talked about that. It's fun in athletics anyway. Well, and I think this applies to life when I'm thinking about it right now. Fun is like external. Fun is, oh, let's go bounce the ball up against the wall. That's fun. Joy is a deep-rooted internal feeling that can only come from consistent, intentional work at something.
So we're back to intention. We're back to that word intention.
Right. And that sense of joy shifts to pride in a job well done. I remember hearing from a woman who was 105 years old. She said, honey, the only pride that God allows us to have is pride in a job well done. And that is that joy that nobody can take from you. And even if you have a misstep, even if, as Kobe takes a shot and it doesn't go in, that doesn't erase all of the other layers of hard work, intentional hard work that has created that joy.
And so then how does one, if one is a champion, how does one then not rest on one's laurels? How do you not take that? How do you keep yourself motivated to that next level? What do you do?
It's addicting. A champion mentality is addicting. And it is, champions in life look at challenges in life as exciting opportunities. They don't look at challenges as fearful, as something that's going to make them fail, quote unquote, fail. Champions in life are able to have a misstep in life without assigning a judgment to themselves. A champion gymnast is able to fall on beam and just look at it structurally. I didn't push out of my legs. Okay, I got to remember that next time I'll push out of my legs. A non-champion athlete, the first thing they do is they make it personal. I suck, I'm not good, I'm embarrassed, on and on. Right. So great athletes, that's why I love athletics as a masterclass in life. If you can learn, here I go with this word intention again, but if you can learn, in life you're going to fall. You're going to fall in your relationships, physically, with your job. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make blunders. You're going to have to apologize to the day you die. That's just called life. But in life, if you can learn to pick yourself up with intention toward not making that same mistake, that's when you're leading a masterful life. And that is the enthusiasm and the challenge that great athletes innately love.
That is the challenge, isn't it? Is to take those gifts that they're given at birth, to develop them, because they're not going to become natural. They may have natural athletic ability, but they don't become great athletes without developing it. And then the game is to get to that highest level, which so few get to. And that's the goal.
You know what? You look at The Last Dance. LeBron, he could go out and by rote, just kind of like, I have a good game. Okay, he's going to get. But when did he get fired up? Was when he was challenged. I don't know if it was Isaiah Thomas or whomever said. And he just went, okay, here we go. Great athletes love the challenge.
Oh, the whole thing with Michael Jordan, and as soon as something happened to the negative, he just went just over the top to change that, to win beyond the loss. So he never took a loss. He took it personally, but he always used it as a motivator to get to that next level again.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's life. Otherwise, if you just do same old, same old, same old, not only are you not growing, but you're literally dying inside. You're shriveling up. If you're not igniting that competitor in you, not to beat someone else, but to beat yourself, to get that 1% better every day. That's what keeps that energy inside us alive and vibrant.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I am really curious. I can't even imagine what it's like to step out. I've been on stage more than once in my life. I've been in front of people plenty of times in my life. I know what that feeling is like to be in front of a crowd. You know what that's like as well. But I can't imagine what it's like to be 18, 19 years old and to step out into an arena filled with people and you have to do a balance beam or some floor exercise or something like that. That's pressure. To me, that's real pressure. What do you do to motivate them to not feel that pressure?
First of all, you redefine it. You redefine what the pressure is. The pressure isn't pressure, it's enthusiasm, it's excitement that you finally get to showcase and celebrate all your hard work. Second of all, this work is done in the gym, the mental game. So when they're up on balance beam, they may hear the roar of the crowd. They may see stuff, but it doesn't come, like we call it the Bruin bubble. They don't let it penetrate their bubble.
Wow.
Of what they are, their mental game. And you can see the great athletes. You can see them having fun on the sidelines, dancing with their teammates. And as soon as it comes to them needing to get ready, like a minute before they're going to compete, their whole focus shifts. And they are no longer hearing their teammates jeering and joking around and dancing. They're in that mental game, deep, 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 deep in that mental game. And that is, Steve, it needs to be learned. And that's why, getting back to children, if you have allowed your child, or your child is someone that, as I said, checks their phone every 6 seconds or can't focus well, it's a skill. Your mind, the mental discipline is a skill that you have to work on every single day.
Mm-hmm. It's a kind of a muscle, isn't it? And the more you work it, the better you get at it.
It's absolutely a muscle. And so if you're kids that are listening, if you're going to class and you're going to have to take a test and you want to recall, okay, well, if you've not practiced that for the whole quarter of how to recall this information, why do you expect to recall it once you get into class?
Exactly. Well, for writers, I love it. And I know writers love it when we get into, because we're definitely not athletic. We're sitting at a computer, a typewriter, a pad of paper and a pen. But we get into this thing called the zone. And when you get into the zone as a writer, all time disappears. And you might go 3 or 4 hours before you look up and go, what time is it? And it's 4 hours later. And how'd that happen? I assume there's a similar feeling to an athlete when they get in a zone.
Absolutely, Steve. But you know what? And correct me if I'm wrong on this, because in writing my book, it was the most daunting, horrific process I've done. Oh, and I'm doing another one. Okay.
Writing is hard work.
It is. But what I've read, and the way to get me doing it, is that even when you're not motivated to write, or even when there's not this brilliant thing that you want to get down on paper or on your computer, you have to have the discipline as a writer to simply write every day.
Absolutely.
You have to write, even if it's crap. You got to write. And that is the muscle. That is, you are developing that mental muscle that I'm churning out 2,500 words a day, regardless of whether it's good or bad.
Well, writing, okay, so a couple of lessons for me on this is that writing is not, the art of writing is not writing. The art of writing is rewriting. So you have to write in order to get to something that you can rewrite. And that first writing part of it is actually quite difficult. And there's a famous book by Annie Lamott called Bird by Bird. I don't know. Do you know it?
I don't.
Okay, so Annie Lamott, Bird by Bird. It's about writing. She's a writer talking about writing, and she has an entire chapter called Shitty First Drafts. That's the title of it. And you have to get through that first draft. I like to equate it to being a sculptor. If you've ever worked with clay, you know that, okay, I've got this misshapen lump of clay, and I'm going to form it into something that we recognize as some form of art. But writers have to make the clay. They don't get the clay. They're not handed the clay. So you have to actually make the clay, which is that crummy first draft. Now you can shape it. So that's why it's so daunting and so difficult. And there is nothing, and this is a famous phrase, not mine, which is the tyranny of the blank page, which is what it is. So there's a kind of a pressure there too that you have to overcome. And one of the things we teach is just write. Don't worry about what it is. Just get that first draft out so you have something to look at and shape. That's what you're talking about. Now,
I love that. And that makes me feel so much better. I took all these notes just now, the art of writing and rewriting.
It is.
Thank you.
It is. There is no such thing that I'm aware of as somebody churning out a very first draft, and that's what gets produced as a book or a screenplay or a play or anything. No. There are many drafts that go into it usually. It's a terrific challenge. Now, you in your career have received into your sphere folks that have a certain amount of development already. You've already recognized them at 16, 17 years old, whatever, that they have skills that you would like to obtain for the school or retain for the school so that you can develop them further. Yes. So you're getting the clay somewhat already molded.
I'm getting the clay because the sport of gymnastics, if you're going to be a real top level gymnast, you're going to peak around 15 or 16. It's usually before they go through puberty.
Right.
And then when they go through puberty, the body changes so much that they have to relearn their gymnastics. And then they have a second peak, which is where we usually get them in college. But in remolding the clay or reworking it, using this metaphor that you're talking about, is most of them, when they've come to college, they have been dictated to. And part of the reason isn't because the coaches are just mean-spirited, but part of it is these young girls and boys, gymnasts, have to learn at such a young age to focus on the skills and to do it correctly. Because if they don't, our sport, you can get very seriously injured.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you fall, you can break your neck. It's so you have to learn at a very, very, very young age. And if you're teaching a 7 or 8 year old that you've got to be fearless on beam, you may not have the time, or they don't have the mental capacity to motivate them. You've got to say, honey, you got to trust me. Get your legs straight and get your arms up before you flip. You've got to dictate to them what to do. And so gymnasts come to us having just been like little robots almost.
Right.
But it's just indicative of the sport. It's not because their coaches were horrible. But when they get to college, you may be teaching them a few skills, but really you're focusing on their mind. It's like I've had so many athletes tell me it's when I got to college is when I became mentally buff. And they start developing that last part of them being these great athletes is that mental discipline, that mental game.
Well, yeah, they're coming to you. They already know how to flip and spin and turn and do all those things, go up high into the air and land. They know all those things by the time they get to you. They have to learn how to then refine that. Yes?
Yes.
All right. So we've been talking for around an hour or so, believe it or not. And I'm going to ask you 2 last questions. The first is, and this I don't mean for this to be to take you too long, but I know that when you first had Caitlin Ohashi come to you, you had a trust issue with her. She really didn't trust you at all, correct?
Yes.
And what did you do to earn her trust? I know I've seen the story told before, but I'm curious for you to tell it here.
In order to earn someone's trust, they have to believe that you care about them as a human being. And not just, I had to make Caitlin understand that I cared about her as a whole human and not just this little commodity that could help me win another championship. And so we all know trust takes time. And there are little building blocks. There are layers and layers and layers and layers. So the one thing I did was I only talked to her about gymnastics in the gym. Outside of the gym, I talked to her about everything that pertained to her as a person outside of the sport. And that's what I encourage parents to do as well, is to have your kids need a safe space where they feel that they can communicate with you and you're not going to be asking them about their grades and how many points they scored in the soccer game and all that. They need a safe space. So with Kate, everything outside of the gym was the safe space. And once she started trusting that I really cared about her as a person, is when we could have an honest relationship. And then when she would be in the gym and do something that she would get in trouble with, or even outside of the gym, we can have a conversation about it. And I can say, Kate, this is why it wasn't okay. And then she can say, and then she trusted that I was bringing it to her because I cared about her, not because I simply wanted to be right.
Okay. Was there any, and if you don't have that to say, it's fine too, but is there a specific thing that you think turned that? There was a specific incident that it really turned everything?
Yeah. And it was when she looked me in the eye, and she was testing me, of course. And she said, Miss Val, I just want you to know that everything you tell me to do, I do the exact opposite. And as a dictator, I could have said, okay, well, guess what? You're getting up at 5:30 in the morning. You're going to go running. I could like punish her for saying that to prove to her that I was her overlord, and I could force her to do things. But thankfully, I was smart enough to go, well, okay, Kate. I said, you know what? Let's just keep working on this trust thing, and hopefully someday you won't have the need to do things that are not helping you live a healthy life just to piss me off. Hopefully we'll get to that point.
Right.
Well, you will want to make a different decision.
So you then got her to, again, we talked about this earlier, you got her to make the decision for herself so that you didn't force her into a decision. She came to it.
Absolutely.
And that is the way to go. So now we have heard so much incredible advice. I'm going to ask the last question. Do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip for those that are trying to come either as an athlete or a coach trying to make their way through the world? What is, do you have a great piece of advice or a tip?
I do. And it sounds a little cliche, but bear with me.
Oh, cliche away, please.
Okay. Choreograph your life.
Ooh, I like that.
Choreography is not dance set to music or whatever. Choreography is any intentional movement that you intentionally do. So stop waiting for life to come to you. Stop waiting to see what happens. Stop waiting to see if you can develop this relationship with this person, and intentionally take the step forward to choreograph your life. Now, the next step in that is it takes courage to take the step. And the reason it takes courage is because courage is taking a step towards your goal without any guarantee of a result.
Yep.
But as we talked about in the beginning of this, it's okay if you were to ask me to come on this podcast, Steve, and I said no. Right. You wouldn't take it personally. It's like, you don't know. You don't even need to know what's going on in my life that I would say no.
Exactly.
But that was the courage. So my advice to people is choreograph your life in big, bold, brilliant strokes.
Ooh.
And be kind to yourself when you fall, because when you fell because you were courageous. People don't fall sitting on their couches watching reruns. People fall by taking big, bold, beautiful steps.
Well, I've said this on the show many times. George Bernard Shaw, it's a favorite quote of mine, is a man who makes no mistakes makes nothing at all. You have to fail in order to succeed.
Absolutely.
So this has been just a phenomenal interview, and I'm so appreciative of your coming on the show today. I have just learned so much, and it's from a perspective I would not normally be investigating, but this has just been phenomenal. So I'm truly grateful for your time and for your great thoughts today.
Thank you. I have so enjoyed this conversation.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.